I'd like to call the meeting of the Education and Government Committee to order. I asked Legislator Kelly if we could rearrange so that we can give Cheryl some time before the full board meeting to discuss our rules of procedure. So that should get excited. Any discussion from any legislators before we tackle the resolutions? Hearing none. The first resolution we have tonight is a resolution appointing the Democratic Election Commissioner for a Board of Elections. I look for a sponsor in a second. Terry and Bob. This is for a 4-year appointment. The appointment came through from the county commission board.
Committee, so do you want me to sponsor?
Oh, I don't mind. And any discussion?
Full board.
Full board.
Well, I will be abstaining. My son Jamie is the appointee.
Okay.
Full board everybody else.
The next resolution is a resolution confirming appointments to the Montgomery County Ethics Board. I would like to sponsor this. I'd look for a second. Martin, I think. These were handed down from the executive. We do have to make 1 or 2 changes. The first being the appointments need to be staggered terms. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with everybody, is the first name on the list, a 1-year term, the next 2-year terms, and the last 2 3-year terms. That gives the brand new guys the time to get acclimated to the board and see how it works. And I think that we've got a lot of great members appointed to this. So any other discussion?
I just want to ask, do they meet on a regular basis, or do they meet when there's an official complaint, or how does that work?
They meet at the direction of the county executive, and they meet at the beginning of the year to review the financial disclosures that all Montgomery County officials are required to file that are on the list that is created from the board that we appointed last month. And they also would meet if there would be a complaint, but they don't meet monthly if there's no business to attend to. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I did, Chair.
Yep.
As far as the terms, I think I would rather, in just my opinion, have Doug or McMahon, Mr. McMahon, be on 3 years to provide consistency for the other members as they terms expire.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't think there's, unless there's if the county executive has an opinion, I don't think. Frankly, we need to divide it up one way or another. So you'd like to maybe Mr. McMahon's been on the committee for a while, and I think he could provide that continuity. Would we want to change him to swap him? Whatever's. Did you say 2 or 3, or do you?
The 3.
Okay, can we swap McMahon and McKinney, the mix?
Okay, so Doug would be
1 year.
1 year.
Robert McMahon and James Park would be 3-year. Bob Sullivan and Mike McKinney would be 2-year, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, is that fine with you, Martin? Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Thank you, Roy. Any other discussion? Full board?
Full board.
Next resolution is a resolution setting the date and time of the organizational meeting. Look for a sponsor in a second.
Sponsor.
Martin, and I'll second. I've been told that the tradition is the 1st at 8 a.m. Right, Barb? That's when you want to meet?
8 a.m.?
8 a.m. on the 1st?
That's funny.
Midnight. Any Deb,
I think 11, didn't we all, consensus was 11?
do we want to do the first or the following? It's,
If we don't meet the first, that means Cheryl doesn't get
Yeah, because it's,
holiday. So
yeah, the first.
The first at 10:30, 11.
First at 10:30.
first at 10:30?
Yeah.
Is 9 o'clock too early for anybody? Is it too early? I don't want to screw
It
up the
depends
whole
if you party the night before.
10:30, 11.
Let's do 10:30,
10:30 is a
11.
good.
11 sound good to you, Tom?
You know, we
11
have
is
to
that?
allow some of us to get ready.
I guess you're not controlling it.
11 o'clock. If people don't like it, they can vote against it or put up an amendment. 11 o'clock on the 1st. Do we need to set a place or is it just, it's here? All in favor of moving to full board?
Aye.
Next is a resolution authorizing priority campus safety project, critical maintenance project for FM. Look for a sponsor in a second. Barbara and Joe. I turn it over to President Swanger if you'd like to give a little description. He could probably do it a little better than I.
These, you have 3 resolutions tonight. If you don't mind, I'll just address them. They are not asking you to make any financial decisions that you haven't already made. They are the language that we need to have to move forward to get the state funding, the state match. There's some specific language that you have to endorse the project. Even when you are not contributing funds to projects like the sewer project, for example, and for the student union project, for example, that the funds, the 50% match coming from other sources, the college property is owned by the 2 counties. Therefore, we need to approve those projects, and that's what these are for. I'm going to detail about what we're doing with each of those projects, if you like.
Okay, we're all set at least on the first one. Thank you. Any questions, comments on the first one? Hearing none, full board? Very good. Next is a resolution authorizing priority wastewater treatment plant project, critical maintenance project for FM. Sponsor in a second, Barbara and Joe. Any discussion or questions on this? Hearing none, all in favor of moving to full board?
Full board.
Next is a, oh, sorry. Okay. Next is a resolution authorizing student union improvements project, FMCC. Barbara and Joe, any questions, comments on this one? Very good. All in favor of moving to full board?
Aye.
Okay. You're all set, Cheryl? Okay. So under other, I would like to open the floor for discussion. I believe it was beginning of December, beginning of the month, that I sent out a new rules of procedure. I hope all of you got a chance to look at them. First glance, it's a whole overhaul of the rules of procedure. Over the years, I think, upon starting to go through them, there was a lot of repetition. It said that Robert's rules were our rules of order in 4 different locations. I think once is sufficient. Clarified a couple things. Took out, there were a couple remaining supervisors. So there was a lot of cleanup, reorganization. But the big changes that were made, I'll just go through those briefly, and then any questions or concerns, I would love to hear from all of you. The first, I guess, would be one that it's one that we discussed earlier in the year as a motion to reconsider. This was one of those that needed clarification. Formally, it said that it could only be made by somebody who voted in the majority. When we had the issue come up, there was no majority. I believe it was 4-3-1-1 or something along those lines, where there was no majority. Upon looking into the official Roberts rules, they say as well that it should be somebody on the prevailing side. However, looking into the intent of this motion, it really is a motion to change your vote if you have new information presented. And for that reason, what's proposed here, and I'll read it in a second, is a mix of what Robert's Rules suggests and a little twist. As written, it says, a motion to reconsider must be made by a legislator who voted either aye or nay before the adjournment of the meeting of original consideration. Now, so the big changes are, a motion can be made by somebody who voted either yes or no, and it has to be made within the same meeting. Both of those are open to interpretation according to Robert's Rules. They suggest that it be during the same meeting because it's to change your vote, whereas you can make a motion to rescind or repeal at a later date to change that vote. But it's also a motion to change your vote, and my feeling was that if you voted yes or no and participated in the voting and you want to change your vote, you should be allowed to make a motion to reconsider. So this, instead of saying the prevailing side, changes that to somebody that voted either yes or no. So if you participated in voting, you can change your vote within that same period. So, yes. Did you have a question?
I do, because going back to that particular instance, it was 4-4, and there was one absent.
I believe it was 4 yes,
4
1
no.
abstaining, 1 absent, and then the remainder no, 3 no. So it was 4-3-1-1.
But the abstain was, okay, you're right.
Well, and see, that's one of the things in here is the action of abstaining or being absent is not a vote. Because then there would be no way to abstain from a vote that is an ethical issue for a legislator. Because by abstaining, if it's interpreted as a no vote, that would be a vote. But what's actually required is that any action of this legislature, unless otherwise stated, needs 5 positive affirmative votes to pass. If it does not garner that, it fails.
But isn't an abstained vote still a vote, or is it counted as just a non-performance of duty?
It's
Or is it a choice to not
it's a null
make that?
vote. It's a null vote.
It's a
So
null
it's not a 1 or a 0, it's a null. There's nothing.
Okay.
It's not a vote. It's the same as being absent almost. So you're not taking any formal action. You're saying, I choose to recuse myself.
But then, can you then motion to reconsider to change your vote?
Well, we can put that in there, that anybody could make it, or it could be specific. But my feeling was, in reading what the intent of a motion to reconsider is under Robert's Rules, is it should be to change your vote. And if you choose not to vote, you can't change the vote that you didn't make.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, of course, and let me just state, we're not going to be acting on this tonight. Wanted to get this so we could discuss it. I can make any alterations that the majority of the legislature here this evening feels they would be comfortable with, and then those can be on for the organizational meeting, and we can start the year fresh with the new rules of procedure. Any other, while we're on a motion to reconsider, we can come back to it,
It's
but
gotta happen that night, but not necessarily when that vote is.
not necessarily that night. So let's say the regular meeting this evening, we're going through and it's, for some reason we recess.
Okay.
Or if we had a multi-day meeting, if we had a session, it could occur during the same session. It can't happen after adjournment.
But it can happen after a vote's been taken on another vote.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're on resolution 1. I said, oh geez, why'd I do that? We recess.
Mm-hmm.
2 days later, we come back. It's still the same meeting,
Mm-hmm.
but we get by 3-4 more other votes. I can still bring it up.
Of course, as long as there's no adjournment, if it's a recess. So really the intent of it is, let's say we're sitting here and we make an action and you possibly, maybe, it's like a redo. You didn't know which you were voting on, or somebody comes in and says, oh my God, we just got this new information, and it changes everybody's mind. It's your way of going back and changing your vote instead of having to rescind or repeal that action.
My only question on the abstention, I heard you talk about the term abstaining, and, you know, for ethical purposes, you have the ability to abstain. But sometimes we do vote and abstain, not solely because of ethics. A good hypothetical, or not a hypothetical, but it happened this year when we voted for, there were two gentlemen interested, Bob being one, for Alex's vacant seat. I abstained from voting on the person that was looking. I wasn't against him, and I didn't want to send him that message that I was against him. I didn't know him. So it wasn't an ethical vote is what I'm saying. There's an instance where it wasn't an ethical vote. It was just a...
And I just used the ethical example purely as an example of saying there's a lot of people that say that a abstention is a no vote. But if it's a no vote, what's the sense in abstaining? Just vote no. You know, and if there's a conflict of interest on a certain resolution and you abstain, if it's a no vote, couldn't that be interpreted as taking action on that? And I guess my point in it being is an abstention is the lack of a vote. Is that, I guess that's my interpretation after reading into Robert's rules and so on, that it's the lack of a vote. And a motion to reconsider is to change a vote, and if you did not participate in voting, you cannot change your vote by the lack thereof of that vote. Did anybody follow that?
I did. Yep.
I appreciate all the work you put into this, I really do. Just two things.
Mhm.
With respect to an abstention, it really does have the equivalency of a no vote because we need a certain number of affirmative votes. We need 5 to pass legislation. So it has the same effect while it is a different vote. With respect to having someone on the prevailing side make the motion, I think the reason for that is so that we don't cover the same ground and re-vote on issues that have already passed, or failed rather. So you just can't keep bringing them up. I think that's the idea of someone on the prevailing side be the person who sponsors the resolution, because then it opens the potential for an opposite result. Otherwise, you could do that frequently to make a point or...
Absolutely, and I think that's why, I felt the need to put that end limit, at the end of adjournment, because we don't want to, if somebody, let's say somebody's absent from one regular board meeting, you don't want to reconsider every single motion the next time. I don't think that's the intent of it. Now, so there's really two parts to this, and I kind of look for a general feeling one way or another so that we can agree on this come January 1st of the timeline and then who can make the motion, whether it should be a prevailing side, specific votes, and then the timeline of it being before adjournment or before the adjournment of the next following regular meeting.
This is just me personally, my opinion, I like the idea of the fact that it's got to happen within that meeting, because we do have the ability to rescind, repeal, whatever. I do agree, I think, with what Duke was saying was, I think, because it could, your intent and my intent right now tonight might be this, but somebody else's intent in a few years might just be to sit here and bring up everything every time that they want to. So I think they should be on the prevailing side. Whether they were prevailing no or prevailing yes doesn't matter, but I think it should be on the prevailing side.
So the way it's written now, if someone gets thunderstruck during the meeting, they could bring up a resolution to okay.
So let's go on that. Does anybody, let me just break them apart. Does anybody have any concern with before the adjournment? Hearing none. Before the person to make the motion, going with the prevailing side, anybody on the prevailing side of a motion, so if a motion were to fail, anybody that voted no, were absent, or, well, you couldn't if you were absent since it's the same meeting, or abstained could make the motion, or if it passed, anybody voting yes could make the motion. any concerns with the prevailing side. All good?
Well,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I suppose as long as we're imagining scenarios here, then what you could have is someone who was not in attendance at the beginning of the meeting, came to the meeting, and at that point in time, people...
But they didn't vote.
Right.
But they didn't vote, so they wouldn't be able to.
Who cast?
They would if they were absent.
Huh? He said, I think Duke said they're absent.
Yeah, they were absent.
So then later, they missed the vote.
So why don't we say who cast a vote on the prevailing side? Sure, you could say, well, no, because
They
being
weren't there.
absent is not casting a vote.
No, that's what I mean.
So you can't cast a vote if you're absent. Who cast a vote on the prevailing side? Is that agreeable? Very good. The next large item would be resolutions, I believe, going in order. The big change here is earlier this year when we adopted changes to our rules of procedure, we required a informational memorandum to come in on all resolution requests. However, they came in haphazardly with some form, but to an electronic system where they were basically notes put in. If you look at section 202, subsection B of the rules of procedure that I sent out, there's a section called impact statement. Now this section annotates that every single resolution that is accepted, received by the clerk of the legislature shall come accompanied by and permanently attached thereto an impact statement. Now the impact statement looks at purpose, financial, and legislative impact. So it would annotate and describe 4 different sections: the nature of a request in a detailed description, the justification for the request, again, as detailed as possible, the legislative impact, and the financial impact. The legislative impact looking at state laws, the charter, previously adopted resolutions, local laws, so on, and how they impact whether they do or not. And the financial impact looking at the county budget, the tax levy, debt profile, and so on. So this would come in with every single resolution and be attached. So what I want you to picture is when you get your agenda, you will have the resolution and immediately attached thereto right on the agenda and permanently attached to that resolution an impact statement. So there's no way anybody can ever say they didn't see it or it wasn't there. It has to be there in order to be on the agenda. Now this is something, it coincides with subsection A, that all resolutions be received by the clerk of the legislature 10 days prior to the meeting at which they are to be considered. So these need to be coming in to the clerk of the legislature with the impact statement in place. And why I point that out is this is not something that our office will be putting together. It will be a joint effort, I would assume, while it will be administrative, and it's not for us to decide, I would assume it would be a joint effort between the department head, the executive, his staff, including the, as of January 1st, full-time county attorney. So I think it's a way to really formalize this process, have something there that's more than just notes or very explicit, and it will be something that none of us can deny having knowledge of by having it permanently attached.
That's great work, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate that, and I think it's substantive and what I've been looking for. Thank you.
A couple things. I just want to see the same document. I don't want to see one on the back of a napkin and another on the back, perfectly done because I'm not saying that everybody would do that, but it needs to be so that we understand, that it's understandable and readable for us. So I think that if we were to, in our procedure, create that, can we list that as the form?
Yes.
Not just in the form below, but actually attach the form and say this is what you need to fill out.
Yeah, we can definitely do, we can have the form attached. I can just put it right in there. But I just think to have, that it's going to be permanently attached, and that's what I think
Just want it to be consistent.
Exactly. We need consistency, and we need consistent information. So, you know, under legislative impact, have a subsection on state law. What state laws apply? What sections of the charter apply? Are there any local laws or resolutions that apply? And are there any other, you know, is there a federal statute or so on that it clearly will dictate charter, section, whatever dictates this, and that's how it applies.
Now, I know that we can have chairman-approved resolutions. Tell me how this is going to work, because sometimes, you know, it's not on purpose, but sometimes it's last minute. So are we still going to follow, are we still going to have this attached, even though the chairman's approving it on? The only way he can put it on, or she can put it on there, is to have this statement. I've done it several times this year.
Absolutely.
It's requested several
you know, with dictating the resolutions, it just states that any resolution acted upon has to have this permanently attached. So if there's a chairman-approved resolution, it needs to have that attached.
And I would be able to object and say the rules of procedure say it needs to be there, it's not. So, Chairman, even though you want to put it on, I don't think it should be there.
Theoretically, it would be, if we pass these rules of procedure, the impact statement would be no different than a sponsor or a second. You can't vote on a resolution without a sponsor or second.
Here, put that in there. I have a problem with it. You know, it's really exactly what you're looking for all year.
Yeah. And I think it will, it's going to provide a little more transparency. It's going to help us do our jobs better. And I think it will make for better government. Any other concerns on the impact statement?
I like adding in here that it cannot be acted on unless you have it.
I will add that in.
It doesn't say it.
So beef that up a little. And then the other big change that there's two options in place that some of you may have noticed, is committees. We've had lots of discussions about committees, and I put in two different alternatives for membership. The first being that all standing committees shall be composed of 3 members. Now let me explain that number. We reached out to Bob Freeman in the open government sector division of the state in talking about quorums and open meetings a while back. And he questioned why we had 5-person committees, because that is a quorum of our legislature, our total membership, and anything that any one committee was solid on, it would go right through. So what was the sense of even having a committee if you're going to have a committee of a quorum? He also stated that if a committee is less than a quorum of the total membership, that committee can meet and is not subject to open meetings law. So I know we've talked about having workshops before, but how conducive is a workshop sitting around a table like this? You know, the fact of the matter is, when you're sitting at a public meeting, you are a little constrained in what you say, for good reason, but you are constrained in what you say. A standing committee of 3 would not be subject to open meetings law. No offense. But it would not have to be posted to public notice. It could be more of a workshop type setting. So I'm proposing as one option of having committees basically the same as they are now, but to be composed of 3 members. The alternative, which has been brought up over time, is to have committees of the whole. So that would be an alternative, and at that point I sort of want to turn it over, because the implications of that could be nothing, or it could be the elimination of the committee process altogether. So that's kind of broad, and I don't want to. So feelings on committee size. I'd like to hear from any of you on that.
I'm having reservations about the 3. Earlier this year, we kind of, you know, in the one bump in the road that we had, we kind of were saying we need to have this stuff in committee. And things were done, you know, whether it be in the legislative chambers, upstairs, or whatever, and I don't want to get into that three-person, 2 or 3 people doing something and say, well, that was our committee, we ran it through committee, and then nobody else knows about it. And all of a sudden it's here, and it wasn't brought before everybody. I like the idea of the fact that we're having these meetings and we're all able to attend these meetings. And my fear is if we go to 3, that it ends up in a coffee shop somewhere and not necessarily here. That's my concern. So I have a concern with that. The other, while we're talking about that, let's talk about the 9-person committee that we have here tonight. I think we just saw a couple of resolutions that we know everybody's good with, but we're going to have to go back through and act on them again tonight when we were saying full board. And I'm almost thinking that when we have a committee of 9, if there's a way, and I don't know how we do it, but if it gets through the committee of 9, the full committee that we have, if we have committee structures like that in the future, I think that should be the end of it. I don't know why we would bring it back again in 15 minutes.
So in essence, there's really no, and I would agree with you, there's really, if it's a committee of the whole, there's no sense in having separate committee of the wholes. You can have a committee of the whole meeting and treat it as a workshop, as we did at the beginning of the year, to have discussion, but there's no sense in having a committee and saying, okay, we're all good, have the discussion here, and then later on have the same exact thing. So
Almost redundant.
And as far as the 3-person one goes, I agree with you. It's it would be done behind closed doors, but I think that accomplishes what the committee process at higher levels does. However, we are a 9-person legislature. We are not a 200-member assembly of anything. So that, you know, it really brings up having a committee the size of a quorum really defeats the purpose of a committee as well, because if that committee decides to, if they all say, if the 5 members of a committee say full board, and then at the full board meeting they are all in favor of it still, it doesn't matter what the other 4 have to say. So you know, I think that's the real struggle. If you have, for us, 5 or more, what's the point? And if you have less than 4, it's done. You know, I'm going to call it more of a workshop session.
I would be very good with committee of the whole for every committee. And when we have a meeting night, whether it be every other Tuesday, we act on these. And if we're struggling with it, we just table it and then bring it back to the next committee and get more information rather than to.
And just by act on, do you mean like permanently act on?
Yeah.
So with, you know, going with that concept, what would be the point of having a chairman in regular meetings? If you're going to have committee meetings and you're going to be acting on them, and committee chair people per se, there would be no need to have regular meetings.
Not regular meetings. I would say no need to have the committee meetings. We're having meetings.
Yes.
We have 1 chairman, right? And let that chairman preside over all of our meetings. And then we bring these resolutions, because we now have them 10 days ahead with an impact statement to that meeting. It's on the agenda. You act on it.
Yeah.
If you don't act on it, then you table it and bring it up again, or it dies.
So with that of just eliminating and just correct me if I'm wrong, under that alternative of just eliminating committee meetings altogether and holding the regular meeting, and whether we hold a regular meeting, we could do the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays instead of just the 4th Tuesday, and we could decide that afterwards. But I think I saw Terry, then Barb, and then Duke.
I'm not quite sure what, this past year, what I've seen is that we need more communication and we need more workshops. So how that is done, I don't know. The only thing with the committee of the whole in this forum like it is, I'm not quite sure if everybody's comfortable in speaking. So that would be something that I would question. For example, we were just talking about the local law for the vehicle registration, and not everybody spoke on it. really. So I don't know if that's because they're not comfortable in this type of setting, or they just, you know, I like to have a comfortable setting where everybody will state their opinions and won't have to hold back. Well, I don't know if that's really, but
Barb?
I see the pros and cons to both, but I agree that you don't want to have private diner shop talk, but I wouldn't be happy with whoever was one person in charge. I like having different people being a committee person. I'm not saying you have 7 different captains, but having different committee chairs, you have Terry, who's able to be the physical services, who is able to communicate and give us the information that we need. Martin in all the budget and finance, Ryan for his committees. So when you're able to have that communication with the different legislators, that adds a dimension that I favor.
Well, and I think, and I could be wrong, but I think Legislator Isabel might have mentioned that earlier in the year, of eliminating committees almost takes away each of our specific interests. You know, I may be interested in certain things, and Terry might be interested in, and we're all interested in certain things, but if there is no committee, you're still going to be interested in those things. I wonder if there would be some type of, whether the chairman of the legislature could appoint liaisons to certain departments that would report back to the full legislature. Or, I mean, we can still all have our pet projects that we work on, and some of them, they might not be the standing committee makeup that is handed down January 1. There might be a committee, and I say, okay, the 4 of us really are really interested in this. Let's get together and work on this.
I favor the committee of the whole, and I favor the workshop. I think that having, I mean, if we could do all the committees even in one night, I think we really are able to, we are doing less resolutions than we've done in years past. So we can get them done and then still have the different committees. Have all of them done, as long as we're all going to be here, and it's not a problem with not having a quorum. We can still communicate, and then have the chairman of the board run the full board. So part of the reason why I still like the committee and then to the full board is you give that time to let the information sit, because you can assess it, and we change our minds. We talk to our constituencies, we talk to the people that we get our feedback from. So the perspective and...
Well, with the change in the resolution process, those impact statements and the resolutions will be to the legislature 10 days before, assuming a regular board meeting, and then that agenda will be, as written, 5 days available for everybody. However, if everything is submitted at 10 days before, it's a good thing Cheryl's gone. There's no reason probably that you could turn around maybe on day 7 before and have an agenda giving a full week for members of the public to read the impact statements, which will be public, and the resolution, and for all of us to do so. I want to give Duke a chance to talk. I think, we have to call the regular meeting to order at 7, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, just real quick. I appreciate this work also. I think it's very important, especially the notion that the committee system that we had in the past certainly could dictate how something was passed really before the full board got to discuss it in earnest. People are already staked out positions. And I think that there is something to be said for the smaller committee that is not a quorum. Because I think work of this nature might not have gotten done without a committee chair. And so, and heaven knows we all like our committee positions. Else, how would the chairman of the board actually be able to lobby for his position without promising some chairs?
The chairman would have even less power.
Yeah. So, no, but seriously, there is good work coming out of the committee system, and we saw the work that Martin did just recently, and the things that you've done tonight. So there's some really strong points to be made for committee and committee chairs that don't have a quorum, and that's what I would support.
I like the idea of the smaller committees. I think it gives you an opportunity throughout the year to establish relationships with people who have the same interests that you do and not a wide variety of everything. I think it gives you the opportunity to be in a unconfined, if you will, discussion. I think that you can delineate the information with the report from the chairman from that committee. And that chairman can delineate the information and say, look, this is what we discussed. This is what we're talking about, and this is the reasoning behind it.
Thank you, Bob. I think I just want to throw one thing in and then turn it back over to Tom of, and possibly another alternative if we did move with a 3-person committee of the legislative chairman appointing the committee chairperson people, and then the committee chair people asking 2 other colleagues to join them. And that way, let's say, whichever one of us is appointed a committee chair, then we could say, oh, I feel very strongly about these 3 issues, and I want to tackle these this year, and I also know so-and-so and so-and-so like to, so I want you guys to join me if willing. Just another alternative. Don?
One thing you could do if you did have the committee of the wholes, I mean, we do have a county executive now, so we do bank on him a lot. But you still have liaisons to departments. I was hearing what Barbara was saying earlier about, not having your hand. You can still have a chairman that appointed liaison or 2 to departments. I'm not against the 3. Here's what I'm against: the transparency. It needs to happen in a room, and the media should know it, because we all know we fumbled the football this year on one in particular, which was personnel policy, non-bargaining personnel policy. And I don't think that we should, we throw arrows all day, but that's the way that those things don't happen. It needs to happen publicly. It needs to be able to be with the media at least invited. And any board members that would like to be involved should be able to attend those meetings. They shouldn't just be at random, because the way that it sounds, you just said that Freeman would say, we don't have to. So
You could, but we could also dictate, depending on
Right,
majority of
should.
saying that it would have to be,
think we
subject
should.
to the same open meetings law.
Right.
One thing that our current rules of procedure and the proposed that we're discussing have is that we can create a special committee at any time. So if we have the committee structure so that it's a 5-member or whatever, being that it's over a quorum, that committee could then set up a subcommittee to allow this workshops type of stuff to happen outside of, in a more personal setting.
Let me just ask, since we're getting to 7 o'clock, do any legislators have concerns they would like to discuss here tonight other than what we have discussed already with these rules of procedure?
I don't know that it's in the rules of procedure, but it's in the charter. But it's kind of very much important to our first day. Poor Helen has to come up here and try to run this meeting at the beginning of the, which I'm sure she could care less if she had to do. If there was a way that we could just say that the current chairman opens that meeting, or select a temporary chairman to run the meeting for that meeting, rather than to, because I believe right now it's talking about the clerk that has to do it.
I don't have the charters over there, but, we could write that in there, but either way, this won't be adopted till after we elect a chairman this year, so it wouldn't take effect till next year, so sorry, but at least one more year. And we could change, yeah. And that wouldn't transfer power, so we could do that by local law for the charter. That's something we could clean up right in the charter and just do it there. Any other concerns other than, yes?
In my committee, physical services, I see you did add weights and measures, which is fine, but the property, casualty, and liability insurance was left out. We did approve that to be in physical services, I believe last March, and I would just like, I believe that's the right spot for it. We did some research back then, and most counties have it in physical services or general services. So I would like to see that back in there.
I can tell you that I did receive a request to swap those two, and that's the reason I did do that. I did shuffle around some, but not many. I think they stay true to their true meaning of the committee.
Well, I was the one that submitted to Ryan. My reason behind the submission was that I felt that insurance was a financial risk, and because of we're evaluating the risk, that it should be in the finance committee. But that's the reason why I submitted it. But
Where, I can probably search it quick, but employee insurance, does that fall under?
Personnel.
It does fall under personnel. So I guess one way or another, I tend to agree with you, Roy, and but I think that we should have a set policy, and because it is a physical services issue, same as employee insurance is a personnel issue. So I think I guess my feeling would be, and it's really up to all of us, of either having all insurance under finance or having employee insurance, personnel insurance under personnel, and buildings and grounds general liability under buildings and grounds general liability. Any last thoughts? We can always reconvene after the full board meeting.
You want to have a workshop?
Well, we'll set that to aside for a second. I'd like to do a quick, simple motion because I need to get some sense of what to write in here if we're not going to reconvene. All those in favor of having a 3-person committee structure, can you raise your hand, I guess? So we've got 3.
I just want to, I would be in favor, I just want it to be just like we do now with
3 and open
I don't want to hold
to
up the 3.
3 and open to the public. So that would be 4. Anybody else? 3 and open to the public? Or it doesn't defeat the purpose, but
I don't want three people to come up with and then all of a sudden we have it in our lap.
and all those that would like to have a committee of the whole. 1. What's that? Any that want to keep it at 5? 3, 4? Okay. We're going to have more discussion on that. Do we want to do that this evening, or?
There was no vote for 5
No,
for anything.
No, but we didn't discuss, even the committee chair appointments. Do we want to recess or adjourn? I'd look for a motion to do either.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Barbara, we're adjourned.
Until next time.
Hey, maybe.
Workshop afterwards.
We have another comment under.
I'm ready to go forward.
We have a